Hi, I'm Jeff Schwager with the Washington State Jewish Historical Society, and you are listening to the Agents of Change podcast. This week, we're looking at 6 remarkable women who are all leaders in the Jewish community, making their marks through philanthropy, working in nonprofits, and giving voice to the needy in Seattle and around the world. Our first agent of change today is Michele Rosen, the immediate past president of Jewish Family Service of Seattle, where she chaired a capital campaign that raised $45 million. But to anyone in the Jewish community who has been involved in fundraising or a nonprofit, Michele is a familiar figure. She's been president of the board of the Jewish Federation of Greater Seattle, national chair of the UJA Young Leadership Cabinet, and led the campaign to raise $13 million for Hillel at the University of Washington. Right now, she's chair of the Jewish Women's Archive, on the board of the American Jewish Joint Distribution Committee, and a board member right here at the Washington State Jewish Historical Society. She has described herself as a professional volunteer and credits 3 mentors with showing her the rewards of philanthropy.
My father-in-law was really involved in the Jewish community. I kind of liked that, and he kind of encouraged me to do this. And then somebody from the Fed, a guy named Mel Libman, said, why don't you come on over and do something at the Federation? I said, well, this is where my women's stuff came in. I said, I don't want to do it if it means cutting fruit and planning parties. He said, no, we won't be cutting fruit. And then he and this other person named Marilee Leitner. Do you know, has anybody spoken to you about Marilee Leitner? She's passed away. She became a really close friend. She was in charge of the women's campaign at the Federation. And she kind of took me under her wing. And they taught me how to solicit for money. They don't do that much anymore. And they said to me, both of them, you have this responsibility. It's not just about cutting fruit. It's about securing resources to make sure the community runs the way it needs to run, and we take care of people who otherwise won't be taken care of. And so she got me involved with Mel in the Young Leadership Cabinet, what was the old United Jewish Appeal Young Leadership Cabinet. And that was really a changing point in my life.
A changing point indeed, which led to opportunities all around the world, including the privilege of sitting down with world leaders like Yitzhak Rabin and Shimon Peres. Another organization on whose board Michele sits is the Center for Children and Youth Justice, which was founded by Bobbi Bridge, formerly a justice on the Washington State Supreme Court. A longtime advocate for children whose lives come in contact with the legal system, she started CCYJ in 2006 as she was getting ready to step down from the bench.
Figured I had one more gig in me. I had many years earlier to this, when I was contemplating this, learned that these kids shared so many of the same needs and experiences, whether they came in on the juvenile justice side or whether they came in through the door of child abuse and neglect in child welfare. They really were the same kids. And yet these systems didn't talk to one another. They didn't share resources. They weren't learning from one another. And so how could I bring that to a business, as it were? So, I really thought that we had the opportunity, or I could have an opportunity to do something like that. Yeah, it was a pretty wonderful opportunity.
Opportunities, of course, are where you find them. For Amy Lavin, who had spent a decade working at Microsoft's Health Solutions, an opportunity she couldn't pass up was leading Obliteride, an annual 100-mile bike-a-thon that has raised $12 million to date for the Fred Hutchinson Cancer Research Center.
When you ask people to do something very meaningful in honor of a mission like curing cancer that is sadly touches everybody, people are really driven to commit and will step up and even surprise themselves. And what you see people awaken in themselves is very inspiring. I think people, for something like cancer, which again affects everybody and to whom, for so many people leaves them feeling very helpless, it is a place to apply energy, find community, and believe that you're doing something to try to impart change. But to create an endurance event like that really ask people to step up, raise money, and become aware of the research happening at the Hutch was possible and could create an immense movement to raise money and awareness. And that's exactly what we've done over the past 5.5 years of rides. And again, it'll continue now on as an annual tradition.
But having turned Obliteride into a thriving tradition, Amy was ready for a new challenge, which presented itself in the form of an old friend, the Strom Jewish Community Center, which she took over as chief executive officer in 2017, and where both she and her own children went to daycare. It has been part of her life, literally, longer than she can remember.
I started at the J. I was 18 months old. I have a picture in my office of me. I always say it's a very long story. No. So when I was pregnant, we were living in Green Lake, and my husband and I were both commuting to Microsoft at the time, and I very quickly knew that my child at the time was going to go, I didn't know if it was a boy or a girl, was going to go to the JCC for preschool. And so quickly we signed up, got her enrolled, moved to Mercer Island, and that's important in that I quickly got involved in the J as a parent. And so I served as a co-chair of the parent committee with actually my sister and then another friend of ours from who we'd grown up with. And the three of us were parent committee co-chairs, which meant that we were kind of in a position of, community leadership with other parents, but then also we had the opportunity to serve on the board of the J and better understand kind of at a higher level the agency's goals, opportunities, and of course, like where the key challenges that the agency is trying to, pursue and overcome.
So when Judy Newman, the longtime leader of the J, decided to step down in 2016, Amy was a natural candidate to take over the role.
As Judy was on leading the J and I was on the board, I always used to say, before you're done, I would love the opportunity to have the conversation about whether this is something I could do. And we would joke about it. And Judy announced in June of 2016 that she was ready to retire. Was it? Yes, 2016. And very quickly after that, I started receiving phone calls from people who thought it could be a good fit for me. And of course, I was 2 months ahead of Obliteride. There was nothing I was going to think about except for getting thousands of riders out there raising millions of dollars. And so as Obliteride 2016 passed, I got a couple more calls, and again, someone from that JCC association asking, is this something you'd ever consider? And I said, I don't even want to think about it. And they said, well, is the answer no? If the answer is anything but no, we're going to keep talking. Mm-hmm. And so I gave myself a couple weeks and recovered from Obliteride and started to recognize a couple different things. First of all, the J's on an incredible trajectory of strength. The energy at the J right now, the strength of the programs, the financial stability, and what I've learned in the past year, just over a year in my formal role now, is the growth of the Jewish community in this region is just surging. And our ability to try to reach those people and engage them in a meaningful way around culture, arts, and just that's what the J is about. It's Jewish life and culture. And how do we find connection points with the J for everybody else, and then hopefully ideally with each other to continue those elements of Jewish continuity that define each of us in ways that we personally connect with. So it was kind of like, here's another opportunity to take something that is, again, on a trajectory of growth, but really try to get in there and take it to the next level.
That's Music of Remembrance, the brainchild of Mina Miller, a concert pianist who has performed all over the world. Known for her interpretations of the work of 19th and early 20th century Danish composer Carl Nielsen, she has also had a long-term interest in music created by victims of the Holocaust. In particular, she was inspired by the propaganda film Hitler's Gift to the Jews, which depicted the concentration camp in the Czechoslovakian city of Terezin as a model facility where Jews were treated humanely and allowed to live with all the trappings of civilization, including fine music. It was, of course, an illusion, and once the cameras stopped rolling, the prisoners of Terezin were sent on their way to Auschwitz.
I became fascinated with the music concerts that were performed and the music that was played. And there was a lot of self-identification there. It could have been me. I saw, there's music here. And then I became aware of the music that was created there and the composers that suffered. And so the seeds of Music of Remembrance were born. And as I said, I moved in end of May, 97. And the idea for the organization started to come together in the first year that I was in Seattle. And I basically didn't know anyone in Seattle because I just moved, and I wasn't coming with a job. I was coming as an independent person, so there was nothing to latch on to. But by the summer of 1998, I had met a half dozen people. And I also sought the advice of Gerard Schwartz. I don't know how long you've been in Seattle, but he was, okay. Yeah. So he was conductor of the Seattle Symphony up until the past 5 years, and Jewish and very involved in the community. And so I just said, what do you think? It's my idea, and some of the players I might use. What are your thoughts? I'm thinking of putting it just in maybe a community center or whatever. And he said, it's a great idea. You're going to work very hard to do this. My advice to you, since you're working with serious performers and you want these concerts to be taken seriously as music events, put it in Benaroya Hall. Benaroya Hall was opening that fall. It was the fall of 1998. And we have to get this great concert hall, and so the recital hall is fabulous, and that's what you should do. And then he said, all you can lose is money. Does your husband have a good job? And that became the very famous lines. When I years later, when I told him, I said, did I say that?
Luckily for Mina and her husband, that first concert sold out, and Music of Remembrance was born.
Now we're celebrating our 20th season. We have commissioned about 30 works. We've premiered and produced over 20 now, but we have a lot in the pipeline already. It's been a labor of love. It's been an incredible learning experience. This year, we've expanded our scope so that we have been looking at the impact of war and persecution on not only Jews, but people excluded because of faith, ethnicity, gender, sexuality. And this year, perhaps you've noticed that we are paying tribute to Japanese Americans. Particularly, we have a new work that's commissioned about the Japanese American incarceration. And that's going to premiere at our concert in May. So this is really the first year that we have commissioned and are devoting a significant portion of our work. And we see this very much as part of our work, that the lessons of the Holocaust need to include others besides just Jewish voices.
Elsewhere in the world, Jewish voices are still struggling to be heard. In Spain, where the Sephardic Jews were sent into exile in the 15th century, the Seattle Sephardic Network's Doreen Alhadeff has been working to right historic wrongs. Last year, Doreen became one of the first Americans to receive Spanish citizenship under a new law granting citizenship to people of Sephardic descent.
That was very important to me, not only because of my tie to Spain, which I felt a very strong affinity from the beginning, from when I first went there at age 19. And so I moved forward to apply for my citizenship to Spain. And actually, I've received it. It was a process, but one that I felt very fulfilled by. And in the process, because I was one of the first to go through the process, I've helped countless others that are beginning to do that.
Much as Doreen is invested in Seattle's Sephardic community, there are many values that she sees across the greater Jewish world.
I think that Jewish value of kindness to others, the education important, the value of family. I think one of the things that I work at is empathy. I think we live in a world where things are moving quite quickly, and maybe we don't. I feel very lucky for all that we have, and that maybe we don't take the time to realize that we need to have a little empathy and work toward those that don't have as much. And that is not easily taught. I mean, you have to live it.
Yeah. One member of the Sephardic community who has lived those values for a very long time is Becky Benaroya, at 95 years of age, the grand dame of Seattle's philanthropists. During their 70-year marriage, she and her husband Jack Benaroya gave to countless worthy causes. Since Jack's death of Parkinson's disease in 2012, Becky has continued the philanthropic efforts that have made the Benaroya family legendary in the Pacific Northwest, including a recent $14 million gift to the Tacoma Art Museum.
He was such an extraordinary man, I have to say. He wanted to give to charity. When he first started real estate, he was out on a limb with borrowed money. And he was so caught in between to have this money that really didn't belong to him and wanting to give to charity. He was so... he didn't know what to do first, but he knew that he had to give to charity. But he felt also that it wasn't his money. It was the bank's money. But even back then, he knew he had to give to charity. How many people think like that?
Not enough.
Yeah, I know. And people say, how do you teach people? I don't know how you teach people. You just feel it. You just know it's the right thing to do. And you don't live any differently. Never have you lived any differently when you give. You already have an established way of life. You could have a lot more material things, but who needs all that? So, we both felt that way about giving. And I'm just continuing his legacy.
I know that you gave a lot of money you've given a lot of money to the medical community. Is that something that came from your personal experience?
Yes, our grandson. He was diagnosed at 5.5 years old with juvenile diabetes. He's now 37. So he did a lot of research where to put the money. He's doing the most research. And that was the beginning of medical. But then it didn't just stop there. We give to University of Washington, Parkinson's, give to a lot of organizations.
And what about the arts community? You've given so much there. Was that something...
Well, we became glass collectors. We collected quite a substantial collection of glass and other art, but mainly glass. And as you've heard, I'm sure our collection is going to the Tacoma Art Museum.
Yes, that's tremendous.
We could have sold it, but this way other people will enjoy it.
And what about classical music? Is that something that was a passion of his or yours?
Jack was a businessman. He felt that in order to keep good people, you give them a good home. That's exactly how he worded it. He needed a symphony hall to keep the conductor. It was a business. But if I could just tell people that you don't live any differently when you give, you don't. When you give, you really do feel good. You know you're doing something good.
That's a lesson Becky Benaroya, Michele Rosen, Bobbi Bridge, Amy Lavin, Mina Miller, and Doreen Alhadeff have all learned, and have all lived. When you give, you really do feel good. For the Washington State Jewish Historical Society, I'm Jeff Schwager, curator of our 50th anniversary exhibit, Agents of Change.